So there was an attack today that was potentially motivated by radical Islam. Uh, you see this trend that has been growing of lone wolf attacks um, that are done in the name of radical Islamic extremism. You see it in Britain. You see it in Uh, you see it in Germany. You see it in the United States. You see it all over the place, and it happens time and time and time again. Um, and just today, we had another event that, at least on the surface, appears like it may have been motivated by radical Islam. So this is from yourcentralvalley.com. Suspect in Fresno shooting spree that killed 3 shouts Allahu Akbar when arrested. 3 people are dead in a shooting spree in downtown Fresno on Tuesday, and the suspect was wanted in connection to the Motel 6 killing last week, the Fresno Police Department said. Corey Ali Muhammad, 39, shouted Allahu Akbar as police tackled him to the ground after shootings which were spread over 4 locations, Police Chief Jerry Dyer said. The victims appeared to be random, Dyer said. These individuals that were chosen today did not do anything or did not anything to deserve what they got. Dyer said these were unprovoked attacks. ShotSpotter declared the first gunshots around 10:45 a.m. Muhammad shot into a Pacific Gas and Electric vehicle, killing the passenger. The driver sped away and drove to Fresno Police Headquarters. The chief said Muhammad was armed with a .357 revolver when he opened fire on his first victim, who was sitting inside the PG&E vehicle. Muhammad continued walking and opened fire at a resident but missed. Shortly after, he encountered another resident and shot and killed that person, police said. He then continued to the area of Catholic Charities, where he shot and killed a person in the parking lot, police said. Shortly after, he was apprehended without police firing a shot. Quote, all 16 of these rounds were fired in less than a minute within 4 different locations, Dyer said. Officers responded within 1 minute of the first shots. Muhammad used a social media account in part to perpetrate an anti-white agenda. Dyer said that the men who were killed are believed to have had no connection to Muhammad. Dyer also said it was too early to tell whether terrorism was a factor. Well, I mean, other than the fact that you've got the guy screaming Allahu Akbar after he's running around killing people, I think that's at least a little bit of evidence, if you ask me. But, you know, this guy was almost certainly mentally unstable. You know, who knows what was going on in this guy's life. But for sure, you've got the guy screaming Allah Akbar after killing people. I think you can take that as a sign that radical Islam was involved, at least to a degree. As far as I know, ISIS hasn't come forward and claimed responsibility for this attack, which they more than likely will. They seem to like to claim responsibility for any sort of attack that that might be linked to them in any way. If there is, you know, an attack on the infidels, they will gladly take take the credit for that, whether or not they actually had anything to do with it. And of course, when you're talking about ISIS, it is heavily fueled by ideology, meaning that anybody can subscribe to that ideology. So that is sort of the thread that sort of connects ISIS to these lone wolf terrorists, is the shared view of radical Islam, of a radical interpretation of the Quran. that basically, turns you into a insane caveman who just wants to kill everybody that's not as crazy as you are. And so we don't know 100%, why this guy did what he did, aside from him yelling Allahu Akbar again. But one thing I do want to note is that you do have sort of a response from the Muslim community in that area, and I think it's good that this kind of a response is actually starting to happen more frequently, because it really needs to be the moderate Muslim community that is the tip of the spear in condemning these sorts of events. So the article goes on. The Islamic Cultural Center in Fresno released a statement condemning the shootings. Today, violence hits us close to home. A man who claimed to follow our faith of peace and compassion committed terrible acts of violence in downtown Fresno. We pray for the victims, their families, and friends, and the organizations targeted. The phrase, Allahu Akbar, or God is great, is a prayer of peace for 1.8 billion Muslims around the world. It is a recognition of our role as a part in the creation of the most merciful God, and our duty to see ourselves humbly in relation to God as just a part of the creation. When somebody utters these beautiful words and commits violent acts, it brings pain to our community and crushes our hearts. So that is the kind of response that needs to happen from the Muslim community when these horrific acts of terror are perpetrated. And again, we don't have the full details on what went on. Almost certainly this guy was just crazy. I mean, you could make the argument that all these, lone wolf terrorist jihadis and all these ISIS people, that they're all crazy. And sure, they are all to a degree, but for sure, you've got people who, in some cases, completely blended into their community, and then actually were radicalized, seemed normal to everybody, and then just, out of nowhere, kill a bunch of people. In the case of the San Bernardino shooting, the couple that massacred a bunch of people at a work dinner, or some sort of it was some sort of a work related get together. They showed up and murdered a bunch of people, in the name of radical Islam. And these are people that, their coworkers said seemed completely normal. And of course, there's other cases of this. So, of course, the media always comes out, and the Democrats come out, and they say that you can't condemn the Muslim community when something like this happens. You can't condemn Islam because it will harm the moderate Muslim community. Now, that is a problematic way of thinking, to say the least, because the biggest threat to the moderate Muslim community is the very radical extremism, the very, radical interpretations of the Quran, Sunni Wahhabist, Islam, that they escaped in the first place in many cases. It's the reason they came to the United States. It's the reason they left, the country that they came from, is because of the hardcore radical Islamic ideology that is so prevalent and so pervasive. And of course, authoritarian. And, they actually tried to escape from that. So when you apologize for it, when it comes, when it comes from the places that they escaped, as far as ideology, you're allowing it to continue to grow and to prosper in our own country and across the world. So what needs to happen, and what I'm glad to see happening, again, is the moderate Muslim community, or the Muslim community in general, coming out and condemning these events. Because, as I've noted before, there is a very large percent of the Muslim community, shockingly large numbers of the Muslim community in Western countries, like Germany and France, that actually say they support suicide bombings, for example. This is a big problem, especially when you have a media and a political establishment that continuously serves to be apologists for this kind of behavior. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I wanted to sort of illustrate the response from the Muslim community, and how that is definitely a good thing and a step in the right direction. Now, we have to wait and see, what sort of other information we get about this event. But the bottom line is that, radical Islam is a serious problem, and it's something that needs to be taken seriously. And that is one thing that this administration is doing very well. And that's highlighted in this next article here. So this is from InfoWars. FBI launches terrorist probe in all 50 states. The FBI has open investigations in all 50 states, and there have been at least 37 ISIS-linked plots to attack our country since 2013, said DHS Secretary John Kelly on Tuesday. The U.S. border remains open, and the jihadis are working to exploit the national security weaknesses and plot attacks every single day, quote-unquote, Kelly said at a George Washington University address. Quote, "We don't know their intentions," he said. "We don't know why they're here or why they're coming. We are completely blind to what they are capable of." In the past year alone, there have been 36 homegrown terrorists in 18 states. "We've seen an unprecedented spike in homegrown terrorism," Kelly pointed out. "These are the cases we know about. Homegrown terrorism is notoriously difficult to predict and control." And it is because it's an ideology, which is why being ready to fight it on a physical level, combat it on a physical level, is one thing. That is, of course, a key aspect of it, but just as key, maybe even more so, is fighting it on a cultural level, fighting it on an ideological level, and not having sort of this trifecta of the Muslim community, in many cases, the media, and the political establishment all coming out and serving as apologists for these terrorists that kill people. And it's good to see, very good to see, an administration that is taking radical Islamic terrorism seriously and is actually looking into it in a real way. So, I'm happy to see President Trump and his administration moving in that direction. That is definitely fulfilling, one of his key campaign promises in many ways. And now we move on to to good old Google and the fight to censor fake news. So it's been the main thing pushed by the MSM, the mainstream media, in terms of trying to shut down their competition. So instead of just labeling anybody that they disagree with as a conspiracy theorist, Now the new thing is to label it as fake news. And the number one target of the fake news label is almost undoubtedly Alex Jones and InfoWars. And in a lot of ways, there's been a lot of speculation. Everybody knows, that Twitter and Facebook and Google all are, left-leaning companies, left-leaning organizations, and that they, in fact, actively censor conservative, points of view. People like Paul Joseph Watson, for example. And everybody knows that goes on, but it's sort of kind of done in the shadows, and they'll demonetize, they'll put age restrictions on things, they'll sort of say that your content is inappropriate when somebody on the other side of the political spectrum is saying pretty much the same thing or something worse in another way, yet they can get away with it. So these things happen time and time again, but it sort of all gets lost in the terms of service and, oh, did that really happen, this and that. Everyone just kind of knows that sort of thing happens. But more and more there is, just solid, irrefutable evidence, proof that organizations like Google do actively try to shut down their competition, to label them as fake news, and to actively try to censor them in other ways, like trying to restrict their access to revenue through ads and other services, and it really gets illustrated pretty well in this next article here. So this is from Business Insider. Google says rogue vendor violated guidelines by instructing contractors to rate InfoWars as untrustworthy site. Google said Monday that a vendor mistakenly told staffers working for the search engine that InfoWars should be ranked as a low-quality site. The prominent right-wing website, which has been known to stoke conspiracy theories, blasted Google on Monday after pro-Trump media personality Mike Cernovich shared screenshots that showed a Google contractor saying InfoWars should be rated as a low to medium reliable site since its stories are, quote, often debunked. Yes, by the cat lady, living in her little house by herself that runs Snopes.com, who is, just apparently the arbiter of truth, or maybe, Media Matters run by David Brock and the White House, basically. I'm sure they're totally objective. And it goes on. A Google representative appeared to confirm the validity of Cernovich's report, linking Business Insider to his Medium post. And Mike Cernovich is this, I guess, he's like a pro-Trump blogger. He recently broke the story about Susan Rice and how she was knowingly unmasking Trump officials, and how she had lied about that. And of course, she needs to go, testify under oath, absolutely. But he pretty much broke that story, and then, of course, right after that, Bloomberg and others reported on it. So he more than likely forced them to actually report on that. But he's, being attacked as, fake news, of course. And he came out and, said that this was going on, said that that Google vendors were actually targeting InfoWars specifically as a site to be targeted as fake news. And then they say that that's fake news, pretty much. They say he's fake news for reporting on Google targeting people for fake news, and then it comes out that it's actually real news. So, I don't. That was a little bit of a mind bender there, but yeah. So pretty much they come out, they target InfoWars, which they're not supposed to do. They're supposed to create an algorithm to. They say that's what they're doing, is creating an algorithm to sort of sort through, the different options when you search for something, and to give you stuff from the most credible sources, which of course it becomes a little bit problematic when you're an organization like Google that was basically in the tank for Hillary Clinton. And then, of course, the site goes on. So it said that Mike Cernovich was fake, but then the Google representative actually confirmed it. A vendor hired by Google employees, contractors to rate the website that appear in its search results. The rating is used to improve search quality, helping Google's automated search algorithm prioritize higher-rated, reliable information. In examining how the staffers working as website, quote, raters should evaluate a rather poor website, the contractor pointed to InfoWars, advising raters to consider the quality of the information and its reputation. Google's representative distanced the company from the contractor's instructions, telling Business Insider that it does not instruct quality raters how to grade specific websites, but gives general rules to get unbiased feedback to improve the algorithm. Quote, in this instance, we have confirmed that a vendor we work with sent out more detailed instructions to some raters without our knowledge, which included references to specific sites. The representative said, this is in conflict with the intent of our guidelines, and the vendor has taken action to remove these references in their training module. So, of course, they're pretending like they had no idea what was going on. I'm sure it was all just a coincidence. I'm sure they had no idea. They were just, completely doing that on their own. And you've got Google, who puts forward organizations like Snopes, who is literally a lady who lives with her cat, to be a fact checker, and organizations like Media Matters, which is as much of a liberal DC establishment mouthpiece as it gets. I mean, it is the definition of that, run by David Brock. So, you've got these organizations that are not objective in any way, shape, or form, being put forward as the fact checkers. And then you've got Google behind the scenes, their vendors actually targeting by name websites like InfoWars to be labeled and targeted as fake news. Well, of course, propping up stuff like the Washington Post and CNN, the New York Times, the list goes on. Anything that is going to toe the line for the establishment narrative. So just the latest attempt, to pretty much bury the truth. And of course, we live in an internet age, which is something that completely infuriates the Jeff Zuckers and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, because they would love to have a monopoly on information. And it is not a system that is in the best interest of the truth, that's for sure, to say the least. So, there's definitely some pushback, against this, but it would be really nice. And I know President Trump has alluded to this. It would be really nice to see President Trump really start pushing for, looking at antitrust violations when it comes to Google. Because this is a company that has pretty much become a monopoly. It's basically public service at this point. I mean, Google pretty much is the internet, and for you know, to have them coming out and sort of openly targeting, you know, news organizations, whole news organizations that they disagree with, and trying to shut them down as fake news, that is a very, very troubling sign of things to come. And, you know, it's very disturbing that we've even come, you know, this far in the first place. So hopefully we can see a serious reversal in those trends. And the good news is that we've got an administration that is definitely, at least on the surface, willing to do things in that area. So let's hope President Trump drops the antitrust hammer on Google, because, man, they need to get knocked down a peg or two. And now I want to move on to an article from the Daily Caller. And this highlights another campaign promise of President Trump, something that he is following through on, something that he is absolutely following through on. Now, whether or not you think it's a good thing or not, you know, there can be some debate as to that. I think it sort of depends, because for me, when I look at some of the things that President Trump is thinking about doing economically, when I look at the trillion plus now, apparently, dollar infrastructure program, when I look at the $500 billion, you know, the parental leave program pushed by, you know, Ivanka Trump, you know, when I see a lot of these things that the Michael Cohen, President Trump's economic advisor, you know, total, you know, liberal, talking about, when I hear some of the things he's talking about, and, you know, I see the sort of the Import-Export Bank, you know, not being targeted nearly as harshly as it was. They're talking about just sort of reforming it now. You know, there's a lot of things that I am a little bit troubled with. But one thing that a lot of people really did like that Donald Trump was saying was that he was going to have things made in the United States, and he was going to hire people in the United States. And that's a campaign promise that he is absolutely following through on right now with an executive order. So this is from the Daily Caller. Donald Trump's latest executive order aims to make companies hire American. Donald Trump will sign an executive order in hopes of favoring American workers by reforming the H-1B visa program and minimizing exceptions to the Buy American Act of 1933, which requires the federal government to favor U.S.-made products when funding projects. The president is scheduled to sign a two-part order, Buy American and Hire American, after delivering remarks at a tool manufacturing company in Wisconsin Tuesday. The first part of the executive order, Hire American, seeks to enforce the H-1B visa program so it, quote, serves the national interest by awarding visas to the most skilled and highest paid applicants without bypassing American workers who are qualified for the jobs. Quote, for far too long, rather than operating as designed and allowing only the best and brightest to come in and fill key positions, the H-1B non-immigrant visa program has been administered in a way that harms American workers. Specifically, it has led to a flood of relatively low-wage, low-skilled workers in the tech sector, the official said. The official, just sources say. Quote, our goal is to ensure that U.S. workers who are just as qualified, willing, and deserving to work in these fields are not ignored or otherwise unfairly disadvantaged in the H-1B process. Quote, we are saying to these agencies, tell us everything you can do. The second part of the order, Buy American, instructs the same agencies listed above to favor American-made products, goods, and services when using taxpayer dollars on federally funded projects while minimizing waivers and exceptions to the Buy American law. Quote, Buy American is the Trump administration's highest priority when it comes to spending taxpayer dollars, a senior official said. Agencies have their clear marching orders and will be held strictly accountable for any failure to fulfill the Buy American mission. This order directs every agency to scrupulously monitor, enforce, and comply with Buy American laws. So this is a little bit, this is sort of protectionism. And, you know, I don't know if I'm completely 100% okay with it. Of course, I want things to be made in the United States. Of course, I want us to hire American workers. The problem is, when you go from having an influx of low-skilled workers, low-wage workers, and you go from buying things, you know, overseas, from importing things, and then you start to actually manufacture them themselves, you know, and also on top of that, do that by hiring people in your own country, of course, hiring them at a higher wage. Of course, I want Americans to have good jobs. I want, you know, I want us to make things in the United States. The problem is, it's almost certainly going to raise the price on these different services and products. Almost certainly, at least in the short term. So we're probably going to have to bite the bullet a little bit there. And you know, I hope that it's not going to be something that winds up being a real problem for the Trump presidency, because, you know, we are economically, in so many ways, in a really bad shape. You know, if you just sort of you know, change things so dramatically, there's going to be a very big effect. And, you know, it's like a junkie who has been addicted to, you know, some kind of drug for years, and then you try to go cold turkey. You know, you're gonna go through rehab. Our rehab is going to be, you know, more than likely higher prices, and that's the same thing that you're going to see with, you know, some of the tariffs that he's talking about, like the 20% tariff on stuff that comes from Mexico, stuff that we import from Mexico. Of course, that would just cause the producers in Mexico to raise their prices, passing the bill on to the American people. So that's just sort of, in a fundamental way, what makes me a little bit concerned about sort of protectionist policies like this. But I do think that, for sure, we should be producing things, we should be manufacturing things and producing things in this country at a much higher rate than we are right now. I'm a little concerned when I see policies like this, but on the flip side, what I do think is going to really help, you know, in terms of allowing businesses to prosper in the United States and allowing for us to be able to hire and to be able to produce in our own country, is the fact that you're going to have the corporate tax get cut potentially in half, from 30% to 15%. And also, you know, you're going to have taxes cut across the board. And that's going to allow employers to be able to hire more people, to expand their businesses. And, you know, those are the types of things that the conservative in me really does like. I get a little nervous when I hear about some of the protectionism stuff. But who knows? Maybe Trump is just playing the old 5D chess, as they say. And now we move on to an article from Bloomberg. So what Trump is doing is he's cutting back on the H-1B visa program, which, you know, allows us to bring in, you know, foreign workers to work at, you know, almost invariably a lower wage. And of course, they're also generally lower skilled. But if a company can get away with, you know, hiring somebody from India, for example, for, way less, and they can do about the same job in many ways, then of course they're going to do it. And that is on full display in this article here from Bloomberg. So Facebook gives staff green light to join May 1st political protests. Facebook Inc. said it won't punish employees who take time off to join pro-immigrant protests on May 1st, and in a nod to security staff, janitors, shuttle bus drivers, and others who work for Facebook contractors on campus, the company also said it will investigate if any of its vendors illegally crack down on their employees' protest rights. Quote, at Facebook, we're committed to fostering an inclusive workplace where employees feel comfortable expressing their opinions and speaking up, a spokesman wrote in an emailed statement. We support our people in recognizing International Workers' Day and other efforts to raise awareness for safe and equitable employment conditions. Facebook notified employees of its policy in a posting on an internal forum April 14th. A spokesman said it applies regardless of whether workers notify the company ahead of time. Isn't that just lovely? The Menlo Park, California company also said it would reevaluate its ties to any vendor if it breaks the law that protects workers' rights to organize and protect themselves. Quote, it's important not just to the engineers and H-1B holders that are traditionally thought of as immigrants in tech, but also to folks who are subcontracted but work side by side on those campuses, said Derica Marens, co-founder of Silicon Valley Rising, a union-backed coalition. Immigrants play a critical role in the tech sector, both as engineers and coders, but also is keeping tech campuses running smoothly. And of course, you'll remember the travel ban, the infamous travel bans that just, keep popping up. Of course, the latest one was banned from a judge in Hawaii. And of course, you've got companies like Google and Facebook that are coming out and are claiming damages from the travel ban, saying that some of their workers and some of the, and also students on some campuses, was another reason, were being stranded overseas and are basically being, inconvenienced. And for Google, on Facebook, it was the fact that they had some of their workers, were facing challenges, and they were also not able to hire additional people. So that was actually one of the big, drives behind the travel ban, is companies like Google and Facebook coming out and saying, look, this travel ban is stopping us from getting our cheap, low-skilled workers. This ain't gonna fly. And now you've got Facebook saying that it's okay for its workers to actually openly protest the President of the United States, and it's telling its vendors that if they try to crack down on their employees not showing up to work, even if they give them no notice ahead of time, as it said, that, they're just going to have to deal with that. So this is just, criminal thug level activity, by an organization like Facebook. I'd expect nothing less from, a company run by a guy like Mark Zuckerberg, who of course famously said that his users are, quote, dumb effers for giving up all their private information. So just a little fun fact about Mark Zuckerberg. Of course, you've just got these companies trying to exploit low-skill, low-wage workers, and they're throwing a big old hissy fit now because, the Trump administration is saying, look, we're going to put an end to this. We're going to actually start, hiring American workers and paying them a decent wage. And they just don't want that. That is a bit of a monkey wrench in their operation. And of course you've got Facebook, and that shows, that's very, it really illustrates how clearly left-leaning Facebook is, and how many of the people who work there, especially the people at the top, like Mark Zuckerberg, who was, of course, a Hillary Clinton supporter. You've got these organizations, and they're very far to the left, and they're trying to come out and sort of push. You've got Facebook also being behind the push to censor fake news. And then routinely, time and time again, when the mainstream media does things like say that, President Trump got rid of the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. In the White House, you don't really see Facebook or Snopes or PolitiFact really jump on something like that. But anytime they can criticize somebody like Alex Jones or anybody else who is sort of on the conservative right, anytime they can get a chance to take a shot at one of those people, they will do it, even if there is no real evidence supporting their claim. They are just so desperate to oblige by their confirmation bias that Alex Jones is evil and that Donald Trump is evil, that anytime something happens that on the surface seems like it leads to that conclusion, they will jump on it. And there is yet another example of it. So this is from the Washington Free Beacon. Media spreads misleading video of Trump supposedly tossing away kid's hat. So apparently on Easter Sunday, during the annual White House Easter egg roll, which I didn't even really know was a thing. I don't even know. I guess they have little Easter festivities at the White House. That's cool. Little fun fact. Apparently Sean Spicer, the press secretary, actually was the Easter Bunny at the White House Easter festivals at least once or twice before. So yes, he definitely he is a rising star in the political arena. He has gone from Easter Bunny to press secretary. So definitely moving up in the world. Good for you, Sean Spicer. Another little fun fact there for you. And of course, so all these festivities are going on. It's Easter, and there's all these kids meeting with President Trump and the First Lady and different members of the cabinet. And apparently Trump signs this kid's hat, and then there's a video of him basically signing the hat and then just like tossing it. Ha ha, kid, you thought you were getting a hat from me? Nice try. That's going to be at least $20 or something to that effect, Again, confirmation bias. And the media jumped on it. So the article goes on. Politico's Twitter account spread a misleading video Monday that supposedly showed President Donald Trump tossing a teenager's hat away after he had signed it. Quote, a kid asks Trump to sign his hat at the White House Easter egg roll. The president signs and then tosses the hat into the crowd. How evil, that evil, cruel Donald Trump. The video quickly went viral, racking up nearly 10,000 retweets and getting picked up by other outlets. Trump, using a thick Sharpie, put his signature on the bill of the cap, then looked up and lobbed it back into the crowd with a smile, nowhere near the hand that had given it to him, presumably leaving the hat's owner to scramble as Trump looked on and the crowd laughed, the Washington Post reported. BuzzFeed even claimed that in a tweet that the poor kid ended up without a hat. In the video published by Politico, it's impossible to tell where the teen was standing and where the hat landed, but as NBC News' Micah Grimes pointed out shortly afterward, it, quote, appeared in another angle that he threw it back to the teen who handed it to him. Grimes' NBC colleague Brad Jaffe agreed, quote, y'all are making too much of this, he tweeted. Trump doesn't normally randomly throw the hat into the crowd. He tosses it up jokingly. The guy says, thank you. So you've even got some mainstream media guys on, an NBC panel. Even they aren't willing to stoop to that level of just completely throwing aside any sense of journalistic integrity and just jumping on, something that to you, you see it as confirming this preset notion that you've got that Donald Trump is a horrible person. So you see that, you instantly think that's gotta be what's happening, and you roll with it. And then it turns out that it's not true. And this happens again and again and again. And you're not going to see Google, you're not going to see Facebook, you're not going to see Snopes, you're not going to see Media Matters come out and point out stuff like this. You're just not. The only people that they're going to focus on are people like Alex Jones and InfoWars, which, hate them or love them, you could argue all day about, was this story 100% accurate? Was that story 100% accurate? Is there bias this? Is there bias that? Regardless, free speech in this country is very important. It needs to be protected. And free speech needs to be protected when it comes to people that you don't agree with. I disagree with probably 90% of the articles I see in Vox, for example. I think BuzzFeed is literally just left-wing propaganda. They publish lies all the time. They're the ones that publish the whole, P-gate dossier about Trump, having golden showers with Russian prostitutes and all that other wacko craziness that was just totally absurd. They rolled with that, of course. They didn't get labeled as fake news for that. But I would never say that these organizations should be shut down or labeled as fake news. I think people can decide that for themselves. And they can listen to and look at whatever they damn well please. And, of course, what it really is an attempt to shut down the emerging conservative media because it's a threat. Because it's a threat to organizations like Google and to Facebook and to YouTube. It's something that they can't control, and it's something that doesn't fit with their preconceived liberal left-wing ideology. And of course, the good news is you've got an administration that is pushing back against it, and you've got people becoming more and more aware to the fact that that kind of thing is happening. But, of course, we live in a world where the media jumps on the opportunity to say that Donald Trump is being mean to children on Easter Sunday. So, just ridiculous. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe. Leave me a comment if you've got anything that you'd like to say, any different angles on some of the topics that I discussed, or if you've got anything you'd like me to talk about, or just want to say something random, whatever. I'd like to hear from you. Also, if you would like to listen to the audio version of this, I have that on SoundCloud. Also, follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and I will have the links for all that in the description. I hope you have a wonderful day, and may the Force be with you.